At 9:31 local time in the Strait of Hormuz, northeast of Oman's Musandam Peninsula, the container ship MSC Francesca was making northwest-bound transit when an IRGCN gunboat accelerated out of the coastal shadow and drew alongside without issuing a single radio challenge. No warning, no identification request, no maritime protocol, just a gunboat, a closed distance, and orders to follow. Within hours, the MSC Francesca and a second container ship, the Epaminodes, were in Iranian territorial waters. The IRGC stated both vessels had been seized for operating without required authorization and for manipulating navigation systems. The crews were reported safe. The ships were transferred to Iranian shores, but the ships were never the point. They were the signal. What happened next would redefine the rules of engagement in the world's most critical maritime corridor, and force the US Navy to answer a question that has been building since the blockade began on April 13th. When Iran seizes vessels under the cover of a ceasefire during a diplomatic window, while peace talks are nominally still running, what does the United States do next? The answer to that question is being assembled right now in the waters between the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. And it is not a diplomatic note. To understand why today's seizures are different from the 21 previous attacks on commercial shipping since Operation Epic Fury began, you have to understand the timing. On Tuesday, less than 24 hours before the MSC Francesca was stopped, President Trump announced a ceasefire extension, publicly inviting Tehran to submit a unified proposal to end the war. The extension was designed to give Pakistani mediators the space to restart a second round of talks in Islamabad. Iran's foreign ministry responded by calling US actions unacceptable and declining to confirm whether its negotiators would attend. Then, the morning after the ceasefire extension, the IRGC seized 2 ships. This is not coincidence. This is doctrine. Tehran's operational logic under ceasefire conditions is the same logic it has used throughout the conflict. Use the pauses in kinetic escalation to assert maritime control, demonstrate to a domestic audience that the blockade is being resisted, and test whether Washington will constrain its naval response out of deference to the diplomatic track. Every time Iran fires on a vessel or seizes one during a ceasefire window, it is running the same experiment. Does the political cost of disrupting talks outweigh the operational cost of letting the seizure stand? This morning, that experiment included firing on 3 additional merchant vessels. A Liberia-flagged container ship sustained damage to its bridge after being approached by an IRGCN gunboat that opened fire without any prior radio challenge, confirmed by the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Center. A second vessel was fired on 20 nautical miles northeast of Oman. A third, identified by Iranian state media as the Euphoria, was attacked while transiting outbound. 2 ships seized, 3 fired on, all before 10 o'clock local time, all during a ceasefire. The IRGC statement that followed was direct. As long as the United States does not ensure full freedom of navigation for vessels traveling to and from Iran, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz will remain tightly controlled. Reports indicate that the IRGC naval commander, previously associated with the Strait of Hormuz security and maritime strategy, was reportedly replaced following his removal from the role in late March. His successor is believed to be continuing similar strategic directives related to naval operations in the region, but the real threat was still invisible, because Iran's maritime seizure capability is only the surface layer of a multi-domain strategy that has been building in the background since the first day of the conflict. Iran uses 4 distinct methods to restrict traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. Physical attacks from boats, missiles, and drones create the visible kinetic layer, the events that make news. Naval mines create the hidden threat layer, weapons that may have drifted miles from their original positions on Gulf currents and cannot be attributed to a specific IRGCN action even after they detonate. Satellite spoofing and GNSS jamming degrade navigation in the transit corridor, making safe passage technically unreliable even for vessels Iran has explicitly cleared. And the 4th method, selective seizure under claimed regulatory authority, creates legal ambiguity that confuses the maritime insurance market and suppresses voluntary transits even when no direct physical threat exists. Each method individually is manageable. Together, they create a layered deterrence architecture that has reduced traffic through a waterway normally carrying 138 vessels per day to single-digit transits. and kept Brent crude oil above $100 per barrel for weeks. The seizure of MSC Francesca and Epaminodes activates all 4 layers simultaneously. The vessels were physically stopped. Their navigation data was questioned. Their crews are under Iranian control, and every shipping company with vessels in the region is now running the same calculation. Does the cargo justify the risk of becoming the next name on an IRGCN seizure statement? Now the focus shifts to the United States and how it responds in the coming phase, because the USS Spruance seizure of the MV Tuska on April 20th established a precedent. And a precedent is not a one-time event, it is a policy. When the Tuska ran for Bandar Abbas, despite 6 hours of radio warnings, the Spruance engaged with her Mark 45 5-inch naval gun, disabled the vessel's propulsion system, and Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit boarded and seized the ship. CENTCOM broadcast the footage in real time. Trump confirmed the operation within minutes on his personal social media account. The operational response to Iran's seizures of MSC Francesca and Epaminodes will not be diplomatic. It will be proportional. And proportionality in this context means demonstrating that the U.S. boarding and interception capability extends to every Iran-linked vessel operating in international waters, not just the ones running the blockade at speed. The force posture assembled to deliver that response is the largest concentration of U.S. naval power in the Gulf in 2 decades. USS Abraham Lincoln and its carrier strike group hold position in the northern Arabian Sea, providing the fixed-wing air supremacy layer. F/A, 18E/F Super Hornets, and F-35C Lightning IIs running combat air patrol over the operating area continuously. USS Gerald R. Ford, which returned to the region via the Red Sea following its temporary withdrawal, has rejoined the theater with a full 90 aircraft air wing embarked, 2 carrier strike groups, 2 separate Aegis destroyer screens, 2 independent air wings that can reach any point in the Gulf of Oman within minutes. USS Tripoli, the America-class amphibious assault ship, operates as the boarding force platform. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit aboard Tripoli includes the Maritime Raid Force, specifically trained for opposed vessel boardings, fast rope insertion from MH-60R and MH-60S Seahawk helicopters, vessel seizure under fire, crew control, and cargo inspection. The Tuska operation was the unit's first combat boarding of this conflict. The MSC Francesca and Epaminodes seizures have given the MEU 2 additional strategic justifications to operate. USS Lewis B. Puller, the expeditionary sea base ship, provides the AH-64 Apache attack helicopters that have been running direct suppression missions against IRGCN fast attack craft. The Apache is particularly effective against the swarm boat threat because it can operate at altitudes and speeds that fast attack crews cannot effectively engage while maintaining the visual acquisition range required to positively identify vessels before firing. That distinction matters enormously in a waterway where commercial and military traffic share the same corridors. The subsurface layer is held by Los Angeles-class and Virginia-class nuclear attack submarines, operating in positions that are classified but whose presence is routinely acknowledged by CENTCOM as part of the integrated force posture. The submarine threat to Iran's fast attack craft and mine-laying operations is the most credible deterrent in confined waters, because the IRGCN has no reliable method of locating and tracking American attack submarines in the Gulf of Oman. Task Force 59, the U.S. Navy's unmanned systems command in the region, is running the surveillance architecture that makes the physical force posture visible in real time. Autonomous surface vehicles extract acoustic signatures from every vessel in the operating area. A ship that disables its AIS transponder is automatically flagged as a priority anomaly the moment it enters a defined surveillance radius. A vessel that changes its flag registration cannot change the sound its propellers make. The Gulf has been turned into a biometric checkpoint, and every vessel the IRGCN seizes or attacks adds a new data point to the acoustic library. From above, MQ-4C Triton unmanned aerial vehicles run continuous wide-area surveillance with endurance measured in days. P-8, Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft conduct subsurface acoustic monitoring. E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft track every airborne contact. The communications backbone that ties all of these systems together is maintained by E-11 BACN aircraft that translate disparate data streams from the surface ships, submarines, aircraft, and unmanned platforms into a single integrated operational picture. The MSC Francesca and Epaminodes crews are on Iranian soil. Their vessels are in Iranian territorial waters. The U.S. response doctrine, established by the Tuska operation, does not require an immediate kinetic response to every Iranian seizure. It requires that the accumulated cost of Iranian maritime operations exceed the diplomatic cost of enforcement. That calculation crossed a threshold this morning. Trump confirmed the ceasefire extension on Tuesday, while simultaneously directing the military to continue the blockade of Iranian ports. The two instructions coexist in the same policy space because they serve different objectives. The ceasefire extension preserves the diplomatic track and gives Pakistan's mediators the political environment they need to move Tehran toward Islamabad. The blockade continuation ensures that Iran's daily economic loss, estimated by Trump publicly at approximately $500 million per day, does not pause during the talks. The economic pressure and the diplomatic track are not alternatives. They are simultaneous levers being operated by the same hand. Iran seized 2 ships this morning, while that hand was extended in a ceasefire offer. That sequence tells you something important about where Tehran's decision-making is operating right now. The Foreign Ministry said there is no final decision on returning to talks. The IRGCN seized 2 container ships. Those are not contradictory signals from a unified government. They are contradictory signals from a government managing competing pressures, a military command structure that measures success by maritime control, a diplomatic apparatus trying to find terms acceptable to a Washington that has demonstrated it will board vessels at gunpoint, and an economic base losing $500 million per day that cannot sustain the current posture indefinitely. The U.S. Navy's next move is not a single action. It is a continuation of a systematic enforcement campaign against every Iran-linked vessel in international waters, and a demonstration that seized ships generate seized ships in return. The 25 to 35 Iran-linked tankers currently being tracked in the Gulf of Oman and Arabian Sea by Task Force 59's surveillance network are each a potential Tuska. Each one represents Iranian oil revenue, Iranian weapons transfer logistics, or Iranian compliance with the sanctions architecture that the blockade is enforcing. Each one that attempts transit during a ceasefire becomes a test of whether the ceasefire means anything to the IRGCN chain of command. The MSC Francesca and Epaminodes are not going to be exchanged for a diplomatic gesture. They're going to generate a demand, return the vessels, release the crews, and demonstrate good faith before the second round of talks in Islamabad produces anything except another canceled meeting. If that demand is met, the diplomatic track advances on terms favorable to Washington. If it is not met, the enforcement campaign expands, not to the diplomatic space, but to the maritime one, where the U.S. Navy holds every advantage and where Iran's asymmetric deterrent is being degraded ship by ship, fast boat by fast boat, mine by mine. The strait is not open. The ceasefire is extended. The blockade continues. 2 container ship crews are on Iranian soil, and somewhere in the Gulf of Oman, an MH-60R Seahawk is spinning up on the deck of a destroyer, waiting for a coordinate. The ship Iran seized this morning was never the target. It was the test, and the U.S. Navy has already shown the region exactly what a failed test looks like. If you enjoyed this video, check out one of our other videos and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.